What unsolved mystery has absolutely no plausible explanation? Story 1. Came home from work with a 12-pack of drinks. I was walking up to my door when I dropped. Said 12-pack, a bunch of cans roll out of one end, so I stopped to pick them up and put them back in the box. But there are 13, no matter what, one of the cans won't fit, and they were all clean. No chance of a soda just being left outside. I count 13 cans when I get inside. No idea how that happened. Answer: something similar happened to me once when I was in college. One night I bought a 6-pack, drank 3 beers while home alone, left the rest in a black plastic bag in the fridge. The next night I grabbed the black bag from the fridge to take with me to a party, and on my way looked in it and realized there was a full 6-pack again. Never figured that one out. Story 2. About 2 years ago, my sister was home alone while my mom was at work, and I was at school. I finished early that day and was home at around 1 p.m. I was talking to my sister, and she casually mentioned, "My mom came home for a while." Right away I thought, that was odd because my mom works a few towns over, and even if she came home on her lunch break, she'd have to leave to go back by the time she got here. But I thought maybe she had an appointment or something, so I asked my sister if she said anything. Here is what my sister says happened. She was upstairs in her room when she heard the front door unlock, so she walked over to the stairs to see who it was. The stairs were facing the front door, so you could see it from the top of the stairs, and saw my mom taking her coat off and hanging it up. She looked over at my sister without saying anything, after which my sister was just like, "Oh, okay, it's just Mom," and went back to her room. She also didn't hear her leave. When she told me this, I was pretty spooked, because my mom wouldn't have not said a word. She'd say hi at the very least. I proceeded to call my mom to ask her if she'd been home recently, just to make sure, and just like I thought, she had been home since she left that morning. We still don't know who or what my sister saw, but I was afraid of being home alone for the next 2 weeks, lol. Story 3. Personal mystery. 20 years ago, I had a very brief job selling gas services door to door. Side note, I am not good at selling things, especially those I don't truly believe in. Anyway, as dusk just started to arrive, near 5 p.m., I knocked on a door and an old woman answers. I gave her my standard, "We can save you by switching to XX gas. We look over your latest bills and our offerings to compare." She tells me, "I'm sorry, honey, I don't live here. This is my son's house. Let me get him for you." And I politely accept. After maybe 5, 7, 10 of waiting, I think maybe they'd forgotten me or were trying to blow me off, so I have one last knock, and this time a younger man, mid-40s I'd guess, answers and asks if he can help me. I give him the same sales speech and he stops me midway and says, "Now is not a good time. We just buried my mother today." I apologized and quickly backed away. I tell myself it was a nice way to mess with the door-to-door guy, but I really don't know to this day. Story 4. I once did a magic trick in front of 20 people as a teenager. We had orchestrated it, so there were 2 of us. So the trick is I ask someone from the audience to pick a card, hold it above their head in front of the crowd, but card back facing me, so the entire crowd sees the card. Now someone on the other side of the window behind the crowd also sees the card, and with the crowd facing forwards, they don't see him, so he plasters the card from another deck on the window, and when he's done doing that, I throw the entire deck at the window, and lo and behold, their card is now stuck on the other side of the window. What happened surprised not only the crowd, but myself and my co-magician as well. I throw the deck, and the exact card is not only plastered on the other side of the window, it is also stuck on our side of the window, right next to it. My mind was blown, and I still can't explain it to this day. We played it as a part of the trick, so nobody in that crowd knows what sort of black wizardry went down that day. Story 5. 2 days before the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up, I dreamt I was at the launch. The shuttle took off and caught the gantry. It started to veer off, and I could hear the occupants screaming. 2 days later, I was having a home haircut, and my daughter came in to tell me the news on the TV. It sent shivers down my spine. Of course, it was coincidence, but very creepy. The strangest thing was that I wouldn't have attended the launch. I live in UK, and such a visit was unthinkable. Story 6. I have a personal mystery. When I got home from uni, and before I found a job, I had a period of time where I stayed at my family home. Due to being home alone, often during this time, I tended to be the one who collected the mail and did odd home jobs. One day, we had a particularly large amount of letters and parcel for my brother's birthday, and because 2 trips are for weak people, I struggled and carried them all into the house. I managed to throw the letters onto the table, but about half slipped onto the floor. This is important. Thinking, screw it, I carry the box upstairs to the office and come back down to pick the letters up. Yet, when I come back into the kitchen, there are no letters anywhere. Confused, I check every downstairs table and eventually the mailbox. Nothing at all. Finally, I go back into the kitchen and notice one of the kitchen chairs is slightly pulled out from under the table. I pull it all the way out, and under the cushion on the seat is a neat pile of the letters. There was no one but me at home for a few hours before this. Utterly confused till this day. Story 7. I was late for an appointment one day and was speeding up a hill with a big curve to the right, the direction I was going. Almost as soon as I got around the curve, I saw there was an accident in front of me, blocking both lanes on my side. Since there were only 1 or 2 other cars stuck behind it, it must be just happened, because there were no emergency vehicles there yet. To the right of me was a sidewalk where people were standing gawking, and to my left was oncoming traffic in the other 2 lanes. So I couldn't go around it, and I was going too fast to be able to stop in time. I knew if I relaxed, I was less likely to be as severely injured, so I quickly shut my eyes and relaxed as much as I could, and absolutely nothing happened. When I opened my eyes, I could see the crash behind me in my rearview mirror, and I was continuing along an empty, on my side road. This happened about 35 years ago, and to this day I have no idea how that happened. Story 8. We lived in a bi-level house with a chest freezer in the basement and the kitchen on the 2nd floor. When I was younger, I was a teenager, I was asked to bring tater tots upstairs so my mom could make a casserole. I went and grabbed them and came upstairs. When I got upstairs, the tater tots were no longer in my hands, and my mom asked where they were. I thought I had just spaced out and forgot them. So I went back downstairs, and they weren't in the freezer anymore. Searched literally every square inch, nook and cranny between the chest freezer and the kitchen, and they were not anywhere. They never, ever turned up. To this day, my mom thinks I was playing a dumb prank on her. My most plausible explanation is that we live in a computer simulation, and they got accidentally glitched out of it. Story 9. I bought my husband a watch for his 30th birthday, engraved with his name. Not long after he lost it somewhere in the house. We searched everywhere for it, but it couldn't be found. Fast forward 13 years, and my husband has a heart attack and dies instantly. 2 weeks later, our 2YO son walks out of the bathroom holding his watch. There are no cupboards in there, just a shower and bath. He's very excited to have it, and to this day, I have no idea where he got it from. Edit. Thanks for the upvotes, guys. I haven't shared this story with many people because it sounds too crazy. I'm very much a realist, not a believer in the paranormal or the unexplained or signs, which is why I'm still amazed when I remember it happening. My son has just turned 8, and the watch is in safekeeping until he's older. He and his twin sister struggled with separation anxiety for a couple of years after, but are now amazing, compassionate kids. Their older brothers are just hitting adulthood or becoming wonderful men. Story 10. When I was 7 or 8, we had this neighbor who was a super nice old lady that would give us snacks and talk to us through her window. She was agoraphobic and never, ever, ever left the house. Her kids would come by every other day or so to check up on her, and everyone in the neighborhood knew them. One day, me and my friends were outside playing like always, when her son comes to bring her groceries like always. He comes out and asks if we've talked to his mom, and we say we haven't seen her in a day or 2. That sweet little old lady vanished from her house. Apparently, no trace of her. Family was around a lot after that, was freaking out. I moved away a few years later, but they never found out what happened. It wasn't until I was an adult that I realized how fudge that whole situation was. Story 11. In college, eating breakfast with 3 friends. All have cereal with milk. One friend, Kay, also has a glass of milk. He's seated directly across from me. I watch him pick up the glass and drop it onto his lap. It disappears from my view as it strikes the table. Absolutely no reaction from him. We ask Kay if he's okay. Kay has no recollection of the glass of milk. We search the immediate area, and no milk anywhere, no glass anywhere. 3 of us remember the glass of milk. Kay has no recollection to this day. TLDR, friend dropped full glass of milk into the void in front of 3 people and had no memory of it. Answer, I made chicken soft tacos for dinner last week. Halfway through cooking, realized we didn't have tortillas. I sent husband to the store to buy soft flour tortillas. Dinner is ready, so I tell my 2 teenage boys to dish up. Shredded chicken is on the stove. All the fixings are on the island, including the unopened bag of tortillas. Husband and I wait in the other room for the boys to finish dishing up before we get ours, because crowded. Boys come sit in the living room with 2 burritos each. Husband and I go into kitchen and grab plates. I reach to grab a tortilla. The bag is sealed, unopened. I look around, totally confused. Examine the bag. No tears anywhere. I look in the trash for an empty bag. Nope. Ask the boys where they got their tortillas. They both said from the bag on the counter. I asked, the new bag? My oldest says yes. He opened it. You deaf? Thanks for the 4 free tortillas glitch. Story 12. When I was in high school, my aunt gave me a t-shirt for my birthday. It was kind of sparkly and not something I ever would buy for myself, but I sometimes wore it. One day I realized I had 2 of this shirt in my closet. No idea how that happened. I could never think of a good explanation, although there must be one. Still seems strange. Answer. When I was a small kid, I had a toy kitty that was really shabby from being played with. One day I picked it up off the floor and put it on my bed, only to find that the kitty was already on the bed. There were 2, completely identical. I never talked to my parents about it, but I set them both on my shelf and never played with them again because I was afraid I would get abducted by aliens or something. Years later, my boyfriend has pointed out that probably at some point, my parents thought they lost the toy and bought me another one on the sly so I wouldn't be upset. Then the old one turned up again. I've still never gotten over how uncannily alike they were, though, down to the patterns of matting on the polyester. Story 13. This is a personal one that happened not so long ago. The first time my girlfriend and I went to a motel, she took her necklace off and put it in a nightstand near the bed. A few hours after we left, she realized she wasn't wearing it and must have forgotten it back at the motel. I called, and no one from the cleaning crew had seen it. Well, tough luck. We just assumed someone found it. It had a silver chain and a somewhat expensive pendant, and kept it for themselves. The following day, I went back to my hometown. I lived 2 A's away, and apparently that was the end of it. Thing is, 2 or 3. Weeks later, I met with her again. We were just starting to see each other at the time, and since I'm from another city, I stay at my grandmother's house on weekends. Just as I was leaving the house for our date, I overhear my mother, aunt, and grandma talking. They were questioning themselves about something they found and couldn't figure out who owned it. That something, the fudge necklace. Apparently, my grandma found it literally in the middle of her bed, strewn over the sheets. I took it and gave it back to my GF, who had bought another one after she lost it. So now she has 2 identical necklaces. I've never been so dumbfounded in my life. There's no way the necklace was accidentally in my jeans pocket or something, because it only reappeared 2 weeks after it was lost. I would have found them in my pockets in the meantime. My grandmother had never met my GF before, and there's literally no way someone could have found it at the motel and sent it back to us, because I hadn't given an address or a phone number, except for my cell phone to the motel staff. And if that wasn't enough, why in the middle of her bed? Story 14. A little late, but this story still makes me sleep with the lights on whenever I think of it. My sister and I were upstairs at my grandparents' house where we lived. We were playing some Disney princess game on our TV. All of a sudden, we hear a loud piece off glass shatter. It seriously sounded like someone dropped a chandelier. My uncle, who was visiting at the time, came sprinting up the stairs because he thought we were being assaulted. He checked in the next room that the sound came from and nothing had fallen. There were no glass shards anywhere. Kinda creeped him out as well. Story 15. I was in NYC near Grand Central Station, and a pair of Hasidic Jews came up to my wife and me and pointedly asked me whether my last name was Igor. I said, yeah. They said, we thought so, and walked away. I still have no idea what the context was, nor how they knew my last name among a busy commuting crowd. Story 16. Personal story, and is something that still bothers me till this day. I'm a soccer football coach of kids. Great way to earn money when you're a student. And each year we have a couple of open practices where parents bring their kids to see if they like soccer, etc. After one of these practices, a kid walks up to me and says, "I'm sorry that you lost your grandma." I was a bit confused and I said, "Ooh, no, you must think of someone else." And I just shrugged it off. The next day I woke up for school and my parents told me my grandma died in her sleep and that her nurse found her in bed that morning. The kid might have mistaken me for someone else, but it still bugs me. Also, he never showed up at practice again. Answer: when I was about 6, my grandfather had a pretty nasty heart attack. I lived in Texas with my family, and my grandparents lived in Florida. We all piled into the minivan to take the long trip to Florida. I had grabbed one of my sister's Ken dolls from her room. I was not known for playing with her Barbies, but I had to bring this doll with me. I held it for almost the entire trip, carried it with me into restaurants, gas stations, everywhere. My mom asked me why I was so attached to it, and I told her that Pop needs me. Every stop we made during this 20-plus hour ride, my mom used a payphone to call my grandmother to check in. Towards the end of the trip, we stopped for a bite to eat. I got out of the car and left Ken on the seat. My mom asked if I needed it, and I told her that Pop is okay now. He doesn't need me now. She said okay and went to make the phone call. For the first time since he got to the hospital, my grandfather was in stable condition, and the doctors said he was going to be okay. I remember bits and pieces of the trip. I remember the doll, and I remember when I left it in the car. I was not told that he was going to be okay, just in case he took a turn. Mom and Dad didn't want to get my hopes up. I asked my mom about the trip a few years ago, and she filled in the holes in what I remembered. And she very vividly remembers that I left Ken in the car before she made the phone call. Sorry for the long story, but your story brought all these memories back to me. Story 17. Kind of personal, and I'm a bit late, but here goes. While visiting Rome a few years back, the group I was with decided to tour the Vatican. One of our friends had a friend who was a brother studying to be a priest. He was going to get us past the tourist barriers for a closer look at everything while we participated in a small mass at one of the numerous altars. When we met up with this fellow, he immediately struck me as someone that I had met before, almost someone that I had a good friendship with, but couldn't explain where or why I had known him. I didn't mention anything as I was too busy hiding the pocket knife that had accidentally left in my bag before trying to get into the basilica. The tour was interesting and the mass was a unique experience, but the whole time this feeling like I knew the man was haunting me. He invited us out to a coffee shop afterwards, and I took the time to retrieve the pocket knife I hid under a trash can. When I returned, there was a seat for me right in front of the brother. I sat down, apologized, and started to listen to the conversations. Yet, as soon as this guy has the chance to talk to me directly, he says, "Have I met you before? I have this strange feeling that we know each other, but I can't place it." I was blown away. We both were. This was the first conversation we had, and we both believed we had known each other personally. But when he explained his life over back in America, I couldn't think of any reasonable explanation as to where we met. And even if we did, the feeling was that of close friends, not of a "I shook hands with you once, TLDR, met a Catholic soon-to-be priest in the Vatican, and we both felt like we knew each other personally without ever meeting each other before." Answer: I once met a guy at a party. I was brought there by a new friend of a friend when I had just moved to the Swedish West Coast and didn't know anyone else there, except for this one guy. We look at each other from across the room, recognize each other and wave with a smile. Then we start talking and realize we don't know from where we know each other. We are both certain we've met, and we could both recall each other's names. But that's it. We spend the rest of the evening trying to figure it out, going through all the places we've lived, worked, studied, all of our friends, hobbies, activities, schools, tastes, family, and some long shots, but to no avail. Still don't know how we knew each other. This was also before social media, so we will never know. Story 18. I lost a toy of Woody from Toy Story I had as a kid, and it showed up a year or so later under the floorboards in my room. found it when we were changing the carpet. Story 19. I was driving home from another state on the interstate, about an hour from home. I was in the right lane when someone cuts me off, forcing me to go into the middle lane. Now there's a car in the left lane, Mr. Scissors in the right lane, and the car in front of me in the middle lane slams on their brakes as I'm merging into the lane. For some reason, instead of doing anything else, I just closed my eyes to brace for impact. Never have done this before, or since. Still don't know why I did, but nothing happens, and I open my eyes after about 2 seconds. Somehow, I'm on the highway going to my house, which is about 10 minutes away from my house, and there were no cars around at all, as far as I could see in front or behind me. Somehow I moved through time or space to avoid a collision, and I still have no idea what happened to this day. Story 20. I was given a potato in school, cannot for the life of me remember why, and I was having a weirdly good time playing with it. I went into my room and started throwing it up in the air and catching it, but one time I threw it up, it just seemed to inexplicably curve backwards over my head. I heard it thump on the ground, but when I turned around to pick it up, it was gone. I spent 10 minutes looking everywhere for it, and it just wasn't there. When we moved house a year later and I was emptying my room, I fully expected to find a gross, rotting potato somewhere. But still, it was nowhere to be found. I asked my parents and even my sister if they'd found and got rid of a potato in my room. Nobody had any idea about it. I'm going to spend the rest of my life wondering where the hell that potato went. Answer: this sort of reminds me of a time I bought a pair of ear gauges. I was sitting on a chair in my living room, taking them out of the box, and I dropped one.